Number 1. The Other House. When I was 9 years old, I spent a weekend at my best friend's house. Her name was Lily, and we had been friends since kindergarten, and I had slept over at her house dozens of times.
Her family lived in an older neighborhood. Large houses, mature trees, the kind of street where the houses were close together, but the yards were deep. I knew her house as well as my own. I knew which drawer the spare blankets were in, which bathroom had the working shower, which step on the back stairs made a sound.
This particular weekend, Lily's parents were away for a night, and her older sister, who was 17, was staying with us. The three of us were left alone in the house for Saturday night. We had pizza, we watched movies, we stayed up too late the way you do when the adults aren't there. Nothing unusual. At some point around 2 a.m., Lily and I were still awake in her bedroom, talking quietly so we wouldn't wake her sister, when Lily said something that I've thought about many times since. She said, "Do you hear that?" I listened. The house was quiet. I said I didn't hear anything. She said the footsteps downstairs. I listened again, and then I did hear them. Slow, deliberate footsteps moving through the kitchen below us. I assumed it was her sister, getting water or a snack. Lily shook her head. Her sister's room was at the other end of the house, upstairs. The footsteps were directly below us in the kitchen, which was at the back of the house. We lay completely still and listened to the footsteps for what felt like a very long time. They moved from the kitchen to the hallway, then stopped, then started again, then stopped. Lily reached over and grabbed my arm without saying anything. We didn't speak, till after about 20 minutes the footsteps stopped and didn't come back. We eventually fell asleep. In the morning, we went downstairs together, and I looked at the kitchen carefully. Everything was exactly as we had left it. Pizza boxes on the counter, glasses by the sink, nothing moved or disturbed. The back door was locked, the windows were locked. There was no sign that anyone had been in the kitchen. We never told Lily's sister. We didn't talk about it much ourselves. Children have a particular talent for deciding not to examine certain things too closely, and we exercised that talent and moved on, and I didn't think about it seriously until I was an adult. What I think about now is the quality of the footsteps. They were slow, deliberate. Not the sound of someone moving through a space in the dark trying not to wake people, but the sound of someone moving through a space they knew well, at their own pace, without concern for who might hear them. Whatever was in that kitchen at 2 a.m. on a Saturday night was not trying to be quiet. It simply had nowhere else to be. Chapter 2. The Tent. My brother and 3 of his friends camped in our backyard when he was 12. This was a rite of passage in our neighborhood. The backyard camp out, a sleeping bag and a flashlight, and the particular bravery of sleeping outside for the first time, which was usually fine and occasionally wasn't. My brother's camp out was the kind that wasn't. They set up the tent in the far corner of the yard, away from the house, which gave them the privacy they wanted and also meant that the light from our back porch didn't reach them. They had flashlights and enough snacks for a small army, and they stayed up too late talking and eventually, at some point well past midnight, fell asleep. My brother woke up at some point in the night because something was touching the outside of the tent. Not dramatically, not hitting it or pushing it or anything that would wake everyone up. Just the particular sound and sensation of something making contact with the exterior fabric of the tent and moving slowly along it. The sound of a hand, he said later, moving slowly from the back of the tent toward the door. He said he lay completely still and listened, and the sound continued for what felt like a very long time, and then stopped at the door of the tent. He waited. His friends were all asleep. The sound didn't continue and didn't repeat. He lay there for a long time and eventually fell back asleep, because children can do that, fall asleep even when frightened, because exhaustion wins eventually. In the morning, he told his friends what he had heard. One of them said he had heard it too. They went inside for breakfast and didn't talk about going back out to check. My brother told my parents there had been an animal in the yard. My mother said probably a raccoon, and the conversation ended there. He didn't correct her because a raccoon was a comfortable explanation, and he was 12, and comfortable explanations were preferable. He told me the real version of it 20 years later, when we were adults and staying up late at a family gathering. He said the thing he had never been able to fully explain away was the hand part. Animals don't move the way a hand moves. They scratch, they push, they investigate in animal ways. What moved along the outside of the tent moved the way a hand moves, flat, deliberate, feeling along the surface. He said he didn't know what to do with that. Even 20 years later, he said he had decided to do nothing with it. He said sometimes nothing is the right response to a thing that has no answer. Chapter 3. The Room We Slept In. I am going to tell you something that 6 of us experienced, and that none of us have ever fully explained, and that I have thought about more or less continuously for the 23 years since it happened. We were 15, 6 of us at a sleepover at our friend Mara's house. Her parents were out of town. Her older brother was technically in charge but practically absent, and we had the run of the house for a Friday night. Standard teenage sleepover. We watched movies, we talked, we stayed up until the kind of late where everything feels slightly unreal. At some point after 3 a.m., we turned off the lights in the living room and everyone arranged themselves on various couches and the floor to sleep. I was almost asleep when the girl next to me, I'll call her S, grabbed my arm. She said, in a whisper so quiet I barely heard it, "Don't look at the corner." I looked at the corner. I'm not going to tell you what I saw because I genuinely cannot describe it in terms that will convey the experience accurately. What I can tell you is what it wasn't. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't a person. It wasn't anything I had a category for. It occupied the corner of the room in the way that things occupy space. It was there, it had presence, it had dimension, and it was aware of us. I looked away. I closed my eyes. I was 15 and I made the decision that every 15-year-old makes in that situation. I was going to pretend I hadn't seen it and go to sleep and deal with whatever I had seen in the morning.
In the morning, nobody talked about it over breakfast. 6 people ate cereal and made jokes and talked about the movies we had watched. Then Mara's older brother left the kitchen and the 6 of us were alone, and one by one, without anyone initiating it, we stopped talking. We all looked at each other.
Said, did everyone see it? 5 people nodded. We spent about an hour comparing what we had experienced. The details aligned in ways that were uncomfortable. Everyone had seen something in the corner. Everyone had experienced it as aware. Nobody could describe it precisely, and when we each tried, the descriptions matched in ways that were not explainable by suggestion or imagination, because several of us described specific details before hearing anyone else's description. We have never fully discussed it since. Over the years, at various points, 2 or 3 of us will be together, and one of us will bring it up, and the conversation will go quiet, and then move to something else. None of us have a satisfying explanation. None of us have stopped thinking about it. The room still exists. Mara's parents still live in that house. I drove past it last year and looked at the window of the living room from the street, and thought about that corner and what was in it at 3 a.m. when we were 15. I don't know if it's still there. I don't know if it was ever not there. I don't know what it was doing in the corner of a suburban living room while 6 teenagers tried to sleep. I know that when S said, "Don't look at the corner," she had already seen it and was warning me, and I know that I looked anyway, and I know that whatever was there, it was looking back.